I could be wrong here, but I'm fairly sure that everyone knows about the 1997 Rose Art board game based on the classic LEGO time travel themed Time Cruisers. And if you don't, there's a great video about it by Time Cruisers expert R.R. Slugger. But it's not the only board game based on Time Cruisers. There is another, one that adds even more to the lore and has a truly unique take on the worlds of LEGO in 1997. We're going to take you all through the gameplay for this time travel board game, but first, a little bit of background. Unlike many of the 80s and 90s LEGO themes, the lore for Time Cruisers predated the theme itself. Now we're going to dive into the whole Time Cruisers saga at some point because it is epic, but for this video it's important to know that the theme was closely tied to the launch of the LEGO Club magazines in Europe in the 1990s. The editors of Click, the LEGO Club magazine in Austria and Germany, were inspired by a time machine design built by Christian Faber, later the mastermind behind Bionicle, for a 1994 catalog. This idea was then expanded upon by Kim Hagen into a whole series of comics featuring characters that eventually became known as Max Timebuster and Professor Cyber. The concept allowed Max to jump from theme to theme using the Doctor's time-traveling car based on Faber's original design. The popularity of these comics led to the creation of the Time Cruisers and eventually to their adversaries, the Time Twisters. By the time the sets hit shelves, the comics had already been running for several issues. The ongoing comic storyline actually incorporated the introduction of the sets and models in ways that were bizarre and creative, like having a magical accident fuse a dragon with the Doctor's car to create the flying time vessel set, and in ways that were bizarre and incredibly boring, like having Max randomly decide to rename himself Tim. During the comics run, Click magazine underwent a transformation of its own, becoming LEGO World Club magazine. This magazine ran the Time Buster comic until the year 2000, long after the theme had retired. It's safe to say that it was pretty committed to maintaining the Time Cruiser theme throughout the run of the magazine. At the peak of Time Cruiser fever, around 1997, freelance illustrator Thomas Warming pitched the idea of doing a massive board game to the LEGO Group. The company was enthusiastic about the project and decided to include it as a promotional item with a subscription to the LEGO World Club. Given that the club had a major role in creating Time Cruisers and in providing an ongoing home for its story, it was only natural that the game would feature the Time Cruisers and their adversaries, the newly introduced Time Twisters. Warming teamed up with his mentor Jørgen Højlund and his son Joachim over many late-night sessions to create the Time Travel Action Game. Readers were encouraged to create their own time machines to play with their game. The suggested design seen here seems to feature the first known Blacktron time agents. Because this was a promotional item, minifigures were not provided with the game, though they are recommended to use as tokens. Since I have all 4 main player characters handy, I'll be using them instead of generic minifigures. You can play as either the Time Cruiser Dr. Cyber, here called Professor Cyber, or the Time Twister Tony Twister, here called Captain Spooky. This is not my favorite alternate name for the character. Normally I would default to the American names for LEGO characters, but here we'll be using the names as they appear in the game. For additional players, you have the option of adding Tim to the Time Cruiser team or Skeletti to the Time Twister team. In team-based play, each player contributes to their team's goal of collecting 8 code chips. As we'll see, there's an element of strategy in playing each character, so collaborating with your teammate to win is an important part of the game. The game features a board for moving around to different time zones, cards for each character, location, and opponent, and chips for tracking codes and life points in combat. My copy included the 2 dice necessary to play, but I don't think this came with the game. The game board and cards are the standout elements of this game because they feature original hand-drawn art. It's a little crude compared to the usual polished LEGO illustrations, but they have some really unique takes on classic 90s LEGO characters and give the game a sense of atmosphere and variety that is essential for a time travel board game. The text for the game's rules and cards also greatly contributes to the experience. Since my copy was entirely in German, I've had to translate all of it. Let me know if there's anything I got wrong in the comments. The story of the game is that Professor Cyber has invented time travel and has constructed 2 time machines, because why have one when you can have 2 at twice the price? But one day he discovers that his reserve time machine has been stolen right out of his laboratory. Professor Cyber knows the culprit, the evil Captain Spooky. Now Spooky wants to destroy the Professor's time machine, and become the only time traveler in the universe. The only way to destroy the original time machine is to find 8 of the 16 secret codes that the professor has hidden in 4 different time zones. The captain is already determined to cause chaos throughout the timeline. The bandits will take over the Wild West, the ghosts will frighten the knights to death, the shark will eat the divers, and the aliens will destroy everything in space. And if Captain Spooky succeeds in destroying the professor's time machine, he will become the absolute ruler of time. The captain must be stopped. Time is running out, and he has a head start. So right off the bat, there are a lot of similarities between this game and its RoseArt counterpart. I doubt any of this was intentional, but it's interesting to see how 2 teams working on the same idea made many of the same design choices. There's the Hypno Disc in the middle, 4 quadrants of the board, split into 4 of more or less the same time zone environments: space, castle, western, and underwater, although in the action game that area is divers themed rather than Aqua Zone. You also have to journey around collecting objects unique to each time zone. What makes this game stand out is the use of the main characters. Rather than being a generic minifigure, as in the RoseArt game, you're put into the shoes, or skeletal feet, of the main Time Cruiser's characters. And that's part of the gameplay. Each of the characters' unique attributes will give them advantages in specific time zones and combat scenarios, so you have to think carefully about which time zones to deploy your character to. For example, because skeletons can move forward quickly without all those muscles and organs weighing them down, Skeletti gets a +1 to every roll when moving through time zones. Except for divers, because I guess skeletons can't swim too well?
Hey, you should see me do the dead man's float.
The game also features dice-based combat, so you have to take that into consideration as well. Because of his intelligence, Professor Cyber can quickly identify his opponent's weak spots, so he gets a +2 to his attack strength when he fights in space, or with the divers. And in case you were worried that Time Cruiser characters Robbie the Robot and Allie the Monkey were left out, they do appear in the game to give Cyber and Tim additional combat advantages. Their main goal in the first part of the game is to choose a time zone and move through the different locations as quickly as possible to get to the secret codes. You're free to choose whatever time zone you want. You can only move your figures forward vertically or horizontally, not diagonally. True to the story, the Time Twisters have the advantage here. The player playing Captain Spooky goes first, followed by Professor Cyber. We'll be playing with Skeletti and Tim as well. Our first encounter with combat was when Skeletti entered the tournament. I love the descriptions on the cards here. It really contributes to the atmosphere of this time zone and helps build suspense. On your wanderings, you come to a tournament. They tell you that the winner of the tournament will receive a shiny tube as a prize, the code. People don't have the slightest idea what's inside. You realize that you have to take part in the tournament in order to get the code. Roll the dice and turn the card over. Not every location requires a battle. If you're lucky and roll a 6, you get the code without any further effort. If you roll a 1, you're out of luck and have to wait for your next turn to roll again. In our case, we rolled a 4, so we get the following description. You've made it to the final battle, and now have to face the Count himself. You know he's a strong opponent. He laughs devilishly when he sees you, and raises his lance. His black horse rushes straight towards you. If you win, the code is yours, but if you lose, you have to miss 2 rounds, or lose a code of your choice. There's a lot of dice rolling at this point, first to choose an attacker, and then again for each round of combat until either you or the combatant loses all of their life chips. Opponents can have up to 3 lives, with the most powerful opponents having fewer lives to give you a fighting chance. The Count has a magic sword that would give him an advantage over Skeletti if Skeletti were on the defensive. Fortunately, it's Skeletti who is attacking this time. Still, he loses a life chip in this round and the next 2. Poor Skeletti didn't win the tournament this time, and he doesn't have a code yet, so he's out for 2 full rounds. Fortunately, he'll get all his life points back for the next round of combat. Now, I'm sure this gameplay will be familiar to any dedicated tabletop gamer, but it took us a while to get used to the various abilities of each character. I'm pretty sure Professor Cyber would have made short work of the alien scientist he encountered in the space zone if we'd only remembered the +2 attack strength and space-based combat that he had. Instead, he was stuck there for several rounds. But to be fair, does this look like someone who could win a fistfight with an alien in battle armor? I think that if you're playing with 4 very competitive players, this aspect of gameplay can be pretty engaging when a player from the opposing side is playing your opponent during combat. You'd better believe they'd be reminding you that you get -2 to your defense strength when fighting a giant squid. Tim had more luck scooting around the western zone, handily beating Joe 5 Aces Williams and the bank robber. Skeletti managed to get through the Count, the Green Dragon, the Ghost, and the prisoner transport guards in time to travel to the underwater zone to help out Captain Spooky. Not every challenge leads to an opponent you have to fight. There's also a water hole, which, yes, someone has poisoned, a lake of slime, and a whirlpool. It took us a while to get past the opponents in each zone, but after we'd collected 4 codes each, things really picked up. It was a race to get back to the time wheel in the center. Both members of your team have to be on the time wheel to win, and one of you has to roll a 6. All 4 players were able to get back to the wheel, but Team Time Cruisers were unable to overcome the Time Twisters' head start. Unfortunately, this means the Time Twisters were left in control of the temporal continuum, this time, at least. All in all, the game was pretty engaging, and the illustrations and text on each card were really fun. You've gotta love seeing LEGO characters and sets brought to life this way. Plus, colorful descriptions like, "The feared Count lives in a castle in the mountains at the end of the world. From here he rules over life and death. It is a full moon, and the wolves are howling as you reach this terrible place." Add a depth and weight that isn't often found in LEGO lore for these themes. If you'd like to save the universe from Captain Spooky yourself, I've included links in the description to scans of the game elements and a translated version of the rules and game card text. Best of luck, but remember, time is already running out.